Hey, I'm Julie. And if you're someone who can hold it together through back to back meetings, high stake conversations, relentless pressure, but by the time you walk through the front door, you've got nothing left, then this episode is for you. You're sharp at work, composed, the one that everyone turns to, but at home, you're irritable, emotionally flat, reaching for the phone instead of sitting next to the person you love. And you've probably told yourself it's a balance problem, that you just need to manage your time better, switch off more, be more present. It's not a balance problem. It's the same survival response that made you successful at work, now making real connections feel impossible. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why that's happening and you'll have something you can actually do about it tonight. What we're going to be talking about today is why switching off feels impossible. You might be brilliant at work, but when you get home, you're absolutely exhausted and you've absolutely got nothing left. Let's get an understanding of what we're actually talking about here. So, do you get home feeling absolutely exhausted and probably snap at maybe your partner or your children or anyone that gets in your way, really? Maybe the dog, tripping up the dog, I don't know, but feeling guilty about it. You've been sitting in a room with so many people at work all day. The last thing you want to do is get home and chat, right? You come home and your brain is just fried because you've been in meetings all day, you've been preparing, you've had to deal with different situations. And quite frankly, when you get home, you don't really want to talk about it anymore. But your partner's trying to be the really nice partner, saying, "Hey, hon, how was your day? Tell me about it." And you're like, "Oh, I really can't be bothered." And then they're like, "Well, oh, thanks. I'm trying to show some interest," right? It happens. So, how do we get over that? Well, that's what we're going to be looking at today. And as always, I'm going to give you a tool and technique um, that we can use in that situation. Now, most people think that this is all about relationships, right? When you get home and you can't deal with it, but it's not. And some people also think it's a time management issue. Well, it isn't just that either, right? I mean, obviously, it can have an impact if you're really rubbish at managing your time, then yes, it will have an impact, but that is not the root of it. It's all to do with your nervous system. Our mind and body is totally connected, right? So let's have a look at what's happening to your nervous system at this point, right? So you get home at 6 o'clock. Well, your nervous system doesn't clock off. The patterns that you've been running in your professional day are still in control, and they're containing your emotions. They might even be showing weakness, but those are your patterns that follow you home. And then what happens is they make that intimacy feel a little bit unsafe because your whole body doesn't feel safe, right? So it doesn't mean you're failing at your relationships. Your body is still running the program that you needed to get you through the day. All right. Your body, your subconscious, your nervous system doesn't know that the meetings are all over and it's now time to relax. So I like easy, I like simple. So I want to just talk to you for a moment about our professional mask and how we can get that off. Now, what do I mean by a mask, right? Well, let's be honest, we have masks in everyday life, right? We might have our work mask. Now, that's even going to be different throughout work, right? So if you're talking to your peers, that mask is going to be different. If you're talking to your boss, that mask is going to be different. If you're talking to the CEO, that mask is going to be different, right? We spend our whole life almost putting on a physical mask. So we actually behave differently. We might even think differently. So you kind of read the room, I suppose, and you put on that relevant mask. But we also do that in our personal life as well. Like if you've got kids, you might put on your child mask so that you can have fun and muck about with them and do whatever it is they want you to do. If you're with your partner, it might be, okay, we've got to be really practical now. So we've got to sort out the bills. We've got to, do you know what I mean? And then you've got the intimacy mask where you need to be vulnerable. So there's no rules about how many masks we have, but we just all have them, whether you've ever thought about it or not. Because most people don't actually realize that we're doing it. But the version of you that succeeds professionally is often the version that struggles to feel safe emotionally. And it's important to understand that that isn't a character flaw, it's how you survived. So if you think about your career, it's required you to stay composed when actually other things might be falling apart, right? Maybe you've had to be the one that holds it together, never letting them see you sweat. Maybe you need to be needed, be useful, but you're being on all the time, right? That's not just behavior, that's your identity. And you've built that identity around being capable, being controlled, being competent. And that identity kept you safe and it got you promoted. It earned your respect. And this is what happens in my work. When we look at the identity and I go through my identity box rewind method, we're actually going deep into your subconscious programming to find what's going on for you. We can hold emotions that we don't know we're holding. We can hold beliefs that we had no idea that we're holding. All right. So you could be carrying grief from one of your parents in your body, and that's how you're living your life because you feel guilty all the time, or you just feel sad, or you feel down. Might not even be yours, but we have our identity box. So this is what our sort of stuck one looks like when we've got these walls around us that we might feel not good enough. We might feel that we have to be the strong one. But when we do the identity work, that's when we can upgrade all that because you're enough, you're good enough, you're safe, your nervous system is safe. A new box, a new identity, a new way of showing up in the world. It's so important that we understand this. And then obviously if you want to make changes, you can. My job here is to try and share some of my knowledge here so that you can start becoming aware really. And that's the first step. And if you have built your identity around the strong one, and slowing down in the evenings or slowing down at the weekends can feel uncomfortable, right? And actually asking for help, receiving support, that can also feel uncomfortable. And what also makes you feel uncomfortable is letting people see the real you, the real version of you, because sometimes we just aren't capable of dropping that mask, or maybe we don't want to, depending on who we're around. Right. So you might have a lot of family members that you actually behave differently in front of. Right. And that's fine. That's quite normal. But what you need to be aware of is what mask you're carrying. And if you're consciously aware of that and you're putting that mask on for that particular situation, then that's absolutely fine. But it's when you're not aware of which mask that you're putting on and off. I just want you to think about in your career right now, what mask do you think you're using? Think about what your career is required of you. Don't have to do anything with the information. Just have a little think. So for me, I'm going to share a little bit of my life. For those who don't know, I spent 35 years in the corporate. By the end, when in my 50s, I started this new career. But I was always the problem solver. I was always the one that held everything together, the one who I'd have to manage projects and things all day at work, hit targets and have the pressure. And at home, I kind of felt I had to do that as well because I had that whole thing. If I didn't do it, it wasn't going to get done. The sad fact was most of the time that was true, but it's about enabling people around you, isn't it? But at work, I was kind of like a different person to the person I was at home. And I used to see that a lot with people. When you saw them outside work, actually quite often they were different, probably in a good way because you see them in a different light because they're not performing as much. But, for me, when I was working in the corporate world and I had my son Josh, my then husband was a stay-at-home dad. So that eliminated a little bit of guilt. But what happened was that I would get up in the morning. I was always out of the house 12 hours at least anyway. And my time to spend with Josh was when I got home from work. But of course, I was torn because I loved spending that time with him because obviously I needed to be a mum, but equally I was exhausted, and it was like, okay, it's my time to bath him and all that, which was great. But then I'd find sometimes that I was a little bit irritable because, as I said, I was exhausted, absolutely knackered. And then as they get older, then you've got all their school things to deal with. You're supporting everybody all of the time. I'm on my second marriage now, but then I, went into the realms of blended families and juggling all of that and all the different emotions that went with that whilst, you're still trying to juggle your career. There's just so much going on all of the time that our body is just in constant array of nervousness, really, because our body's still in that fight flight mode. And this is what happens when we come home. It's really difficult for your body to actually know when to slow down, and it doesn't know how to shut your mind off. And by 8 or 9 o'clock, you might crash in front of the TV and watch something for an hour or two before it's time to go to bed. And then that cycle just continues, doesn't it? And then maybe you can't sleep because your mind really hasn't had a chance to wind down. Now, I used to think this was more of a work-life balance issue, but looking back, it was more of an identity problem. I didn't realize that my identity box, if you like, was running how I was, like the learnt behaviors of being stressed, the learnt behaviors of running around knowing that you've got to be great at everything, and I had definitely beliefs that I wasn't good enough. So, of course, well, if you're not feeling good enough at doing, your job at work, and then you get home and you didn't feel good enough, there's so much to deal with, right? Life can be challenging. And right now, I've done a lot of identity work. I'm out here now doing this with you guys. Yeah, my dad's in hospital. My mum is living with me who's got dementia. And my sister, God bless her, she's taken her out of the way for me, so that I've got time to do this. And it is very challenging. Oh, not to mention I'm dog sitting at the moment as well. So thankfully he's behaving himself at the moment too, right? But whatever happens in whatever time we're at, there's always going to be challenges. But the difference for me now is I have lots of tools and techniques that I can use. Plus, I've done a lot of upgrade work, which means I don't feel that I'm not good enough anymore. I just have to dig deeper next time if I feel a little bit woo, bit way. But I do that and I go and spend time with myself and process and journal. And it's that mindfulness just to calm your mind and calm your body. But calming the nervous system is so important. So here's the problem, right? When we're at work, the rules are very clear. Well, mostly, depending on the company you work for, right? But generally speaking, you might have a target, a structure, expectations. You pretty much know what's required. And maybe some of that you know how to actually win and achieve, right? But intimacy doesn't work like that. Real connection requires presence and vulnerability. So letting someone see you when you're not performing, it impacts your nervous system, right? And it learned to survive, to stay in control. So that feels more threatening than any other board meeting that you might have been on that day. So what happens? You get home, your body's still braced, still scanning, still in protection mode. And that's the problem. Now, I've got another little image for you. And now this is all about, I want you to think of your nervous system as a bodyguard. That bodyguard has been protecting you all day. So at work, that bodyguard is brilliant. It helps you stay focused, it helps you solve problems, and it helps you meet your deadlines and deal with pressure, which is great. Okay. But when you get home, that same bodyguard doesn't automatically stand down because it's still scanning for problems. It's still looking for threats. It's still trying to protect you. I mean, to be fair, it might still need to protect you depending on what's going on at home for you. But the trouble is, the people who love you hopefully aren't the threat. Your partner asking how your day was isn't the threat. Your children wanting your attention, that isn't a threat either. Your nervous system is simply behaving as though the danger is still present. That irritability that you get when you're at home, when, I don't know, maybe someone's not washed up, maybe someone hasn't put the wash on, or you give the kids instructions and they've just ignored you, right? That happens a lot, right? And you start to feel that irritability coming. So that's accumulated activation with nowhere for it to go. It's just building up. The emotional flat that's not just behavior, but that's your identity. That's your system shutting down because it's been running all day. Does it need space? Maybe it does. Maybe that's your nervous system saying, I can't handle one more demand right now. You're not emotionally unavailable because you don't care. You're emotionally unavailable because your body is still in survival mode. And here's the bit that really lands for you high achievers, right? Some people feel calmer at work than they do emotionally close to others. Is that you? Is that how you feel? I see this with my clients a lot. One client could stand up, confidently speak in front of lots of people in the room, right? Board people, meetings, whatever. Yet when he got home and his partner asked him how he was feeling, he would just shut down. He wasn't capable of any emotion. And this, of course, then upsets his partner. Now, you might think that maybe he's just not very good at communication. Well, that is part of it. But he spent years building an identity around being strong, capable, and self-sufficient. So being vulnerable felt more dangerous than presenting to like 100 other people that he'd done during the day. Now, in life, as I said earlier, we've always got challenges. It might be that you're moving house, or you're planning a big event, or maybe someone in your family is sick, and maybe you're sick. But there's all these things going on, and sometimes you want to support them and they want to support you, but we stop each other from supporting each other because we're just so exhausted and we just, well, for want of a better phrase, can't be bothered. In our house, I mean, our boys are both traveling now, but when, we were all here together, we prided ourselves on having dinner talk. So if we were all around, we would all sit around the dinner table and eat dinner together, and we'd go around the table saying, oh, what did you get up to today? Now that might sound really crap and really cliche, but it was about the only time you ever found out anything. And I think it helped us as a family to stay strong. But the point being, it's about trying to make that time for each other, isn't it? And taking your foot off the pedal for a little bit and just relaxing. And I'm going to show you in a minute something that's going to help you do that. So let's have a look at what actually shifts this. So how can you do something in the moment so that when you walk in the house or wherever it is you're doing, that you can make a conscious effort to close that off and open up the new you, take that mask off if you like and put a new one on. All right. So what I'm going to show you now is something that I call the threshold reset. It's a 60-second practice that you can do in the gap between work and home. Now, the actual threshold is that moment that you decide one place ends and one starts, right? Now, if you're actually out at work, then that can be when you walk in the front door. But obviously, if you're working from home, you need to work out a little routine, but you can do it either way, right? And this is one of the things I would teach my clients when I'm working with them. This is just a small piece that you can actually use. And because before we can change a pattern, we have to teach our nervous system that it's safe to let go of that role that we've been playing all day. So in other words, we need to tell our subconscious mind that professional Julie is now off duty and now wife and mother is back on duty. It's all about remembering who you are underneath that performance. Okay. So here's how it works, right? Step number one. The first thing you got to do is stop before you go in. So literally pause. Now that if you drive to work, that might be before you get out of the car, that might be on the doorstep, it might be in the hallway, wherever you decide your threshold is. But do not walk through the door in autopilot. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. Step number two, you're going to do 3 slow breaths with a long exhale. So what I'd like you to do is breathe in for 4 and out for 6. And you're going to do that 3 times, right? So that's going to be in, 2, 3, 4, and then for 6. Then you go in for 4, out for 6, in for 4, out for 6, right? And this is the fastest way to tell your nervous system that the threat is over because you're signaling safety. And if that one doesn't work, you can do the physiological sigh, which is or you can do another breathing technique, right? But the point is you're breaking that cycle when you go in, okay? And step number 3 is to name that shift out loud. So that might be, work is done, I'm home now. It sounds simple, but it works because your brain needs that explicit signal. Otherwise, it will keep running that same program in autopilot. So that's it. Basically, decide when you're going to do it before you move in, do your breathing, and then say your word that's going to be, or phrase, whatever, that's going to be the thing that signals to your brain that that's done. Yeah. And then you can walk in. So as always, let me just put that into another two little scenarios for you. So scenario 1, right? You just got home after a day back-to-back calls. You're already irritated. If you walk in now, you'll snap at the first person who asks you something. So instead, you sit in the car for 60 seconds. You do your 3 breaths, your longer exhale. You say, work is done, I'm home. You get out of the car and you walk in. Now, you're not magically relaxed, but you're not braced either. And you can actually hear what your partner is saying instead of reacting to the fact that she's just talking or he's just talking. Scenario 2, you're working from home. So there's no commute, there's no gap, right? So you finish your last call and you're immediately in family mode with no transition. Now, if you're lucky like me and you've got your own office, obviously I can do that process before I put my hand on the door handle and walk out into the hallway, into the room. If you're not so fortunate and you're already on the dining room table, say, or something like that, then maybe your process is you tidy up your desk, you put your laptop down or whatever it is you're using. And then before you even get up, you do your breaths and then you say, right, my day is over. I'm home now. Whatever works for you, but it's about creating that situation that you can remember to do and you start putting that into practice and see what happens. All right. Now, The practice isn't about relaxation, it's about giving your nervous system the signal it needs to shift out of performance mode. So if you're doing those breathing techniques and you've got time, then sit there and just relax for a little bit longer, wind down a little bit more. Now, I teach my clients coherent breathing, which is 6-6 breathing through the nose. So in for 6, out for 6. And again, the more breathing that you can do, it sends that message to your prefrontal frontal cortex that you're safe. And this is all about calming your nervous system. So maybe just taking that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, even, depending on what luxury you've got to do that, do it. Maybe if you get in the train and you got to walk home or something, use that walking home time to actually do the breathing, or even if you're getting a taxi or something like that, just do the breathing then all the way home. And if you have got time and you can listen to something, listen to a relaxing audio. But the more you can do, the more beneficial it's going to be. When you start giving your body the signal that the day is actually over, something shifts. You stop arriving home braced for the next demand. You're not running on fumes trying to be present. You've got something left. The irritability drops, the emotional flatness lifts, and you can actually be in the room with the people you love instead of just physically being present but not present. We know that feeling, right? When we're there but we're not there. And that's one of the greatest lessons I learned from my dog Luther, actually, who obviously I miss very much, but he's been gone 3 years now. And it's weird having a dog here again at the moment. But they don't worry about performance, do they? They just want your love. They just want your affection. They don't care how productive you've been during that day. They don't care how many emails that you've answered or how many phone calls you've completed. They just want you there just to be present so that you can just, give them a stroke, give them a cuddle, just be present and sit with them. And if you're honest, that's all most people want, right? That's all your kids want. That's all, your parents want. It's not about doing loads of things for them and buying them lots of things. The biggest things kids will remember is time that they spent with you, not dad come home from work and he's always irritable, or mum was always stressed, mum was never available to me, because these are the things that are actually going to impact their identity box. So set a great example. Come in nice and calm. Spend time with them. Do what you need to do and want to do. You don't earn love by being useful. You don't earn connection by carrying everything. And you don't earn rest by reaching breaking point first. And sometimes the most powerful things you can do is to put down that role that you've been playing all day and simply come home as yourself. That's enough. Because that's when the identity starts to shift. When being present stops feeling like another demand and starts feeling like relief. All right. So this is what I want you to do this week. I want you to notice the pattern that's running your professional success, right? Is that pattern making connections feel impossible at home? Because remember, your body doesn't know the meetings are over until you tell it. So your action this week is to do that threshold reset, right? I want you to do that once, tonight or tomorrow, every day, right? So remember, pause before you walk through the door. Do those breathing exercises. 3 breaths in for 4, 6 out, or do the physiological sigh. Do it 3 times and name your shift. My job is done now. I'm home to relax, whatever it is, and start seeing what happens. I promise you, if you can start breaking that cycle, that's going to be one of your first steps to change. All right. If you've recognized yourself in any of this, the version of you that's brilliant at work, but just doesn't feel that they can give anything when they get home, remember, you're not broken. You're just running a system that doesn't know how to switch off. So understanding why that's happening is one thing. And actually being able to do something about it is another, right? Because this is automatic subconscious programming, right? You can't consciously stop it. It's in your subconscious, right? However, I have something called the Evening Upgrade. It's a free audio. It's just over 10 minutes, I think. It's designed to help you actually switch off at night instead of laying there with your brain still running through tomorrow's meetings. It's the reset your nervous system needs, right? So if you can get a good night's sleep, then that really helps you the next day anyway, because when you've got days and days of broken sleep, it doesn't help, does it, being less irritable? When you think that they use sleep deprivation to torture people, right? You're basically torturing yourself by not being able to sleep, by not being able to calm down. And that has a knock-on effect with everything, as we all know. All right. So if you just click on that, it's totally free and it's just my gift to you. So I've been Julie and I'm going to leave you in peace now. Take care. See you soon. Bye.